Hi, everyone. I think we're live now. Welcome to our free online webinar all about how to be a good tourist, travel tips for Europe's most popular destinations. We're so happy to have you all here today. So thank you for joining us for this very important and very timely conversation. So while we wait for everyone to start coming in, go ahead and drop a message in the chat to let us know where you're watching from. And we'll just give folks another minute or so to get situated. All right, lots of people coming in. We've got folks in LA. Ooh, it's early for you in LA. Thank you for joining in first thing in the morning. It's great to have you. Pittsburgh, Washington State, Chicago, London. Lots of folks from all over the world. This is so exciting. All right, Kansas City, Judy from Washington State. Hello, Linda from Toronto. It's great to have you all here. This is great to see so many folks from all over the world. Oh, greetings from rainy, cloudy Boston. Oh no. Hopefully you're got some sunny travels in your future, Mary Ellen. All right. So keep dropping in the chat where you're joining from if you're just logging in. While we get started, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Lindsay, and I'll be your host today. I'm part of the team at Walks and Devour Tours. We specialize in small group walking and food tours in some of the world's most iconic cities. So Rome, Paris, Lisbon, Barcelona, and beyond, and so much more. So just a few housekeeping things before we officially kick off, and I'm going to go ahead and bring up our presentation as well. But if you have any questions throughout the event, you can go ahead and use that same chat feature on the right-hand side of your screen to submit those. My colleagues Hallie and Michele will be holding down the fort in the chat, so they'll keep an eye out on those questions and answer them as they come in. So feel free to just keep the conversation going there. And also just a heads up that if you stick around till the end, we've got a little surprise as thanks for joining us today. So do stay tuned and try and stick around for the entire event if you're able. And I also just wanted to launch a quick poll to learn a little bit more about you all. Where are you visiting on your next trip? Spain, Portugal, Italy, or somewhere else? Or if you're still planning a trip, if you don't have anything specific on the horizon just yet, that's cool too. So go ahead and respond. I'll give everyone about another minute or so. Like I said, if you are traveling somewhere else, that's great. Go ahead and let us know in the chat. Always love to see where folks have their next travel or their next trip planned. And like I said, if you don't have a trip planned at the moment, that's no problem at all. It's very timely conversation that we're having today, of course, but our panelists are going to be sharing some advice that you can apply no matter when you're traveling or where you're visiting. So definitely take notes, and this is going to be a really great conversation. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and kick things off. I will go ahead and end the poll. All right, got people traveling all over Italy, Slovenia, Croatia, Lima, Peru, Lisbon. Amazing. So exciting to see people from all over the world, traveling all over the world. So again, without further ado, let's go ahead and just get started. So as I mentioned, the theme of today's event is all about traveling responsibly, sustainably, and debunking some of the fact versus fiction surrounding the overtourism issue that so many places in Europe are experiencing. So as a tour operator ourselves, we've definitely seen firsthand how tourism, when it's done right, can be a force for good. It supports local communities and economies, it preserves cultural heritage, and it helps travelers connect more deeply with the places they visit. But we've also, of course, seen the challenges, especially in cities and destinations, struggling with over-tourism. And so that's why we wanted to have this conversation today, just to share practical tips and insider advice, and of course, local perspectives that can help you experience Europe and anywhere really in a more respectful, sustainable, and enriching way. So as I mentioned previously, we are Walks and Devour Tours. We're two sister brands helping travelers go deeper, connect more meaningfully with the places they visit, and make a positive impact along the way. So At Walks, we operate small group walking and sightseeing tours designed by locals. And at Devour, our food tour side of the business, we connect curious travelers with local food and people in a way that helps culture thrive. So two different brands with the same goal of doing our part to contribute to meaningful and responsible and mindful tourism. Which brings me to our three panelists for today's event. And first up, we have Lauren Alois, none other than the co-founder of Devour Tours, and currently the VP of Marketing at Walks and Devour, where she leads global strategy for immersive food and cultural experiences across Europe and the US. Lauren is a passionate advocate for responsible tourism. She believes that travel should support local economies and preserve cultural identity, not dilute it. She founded Devour in 2012 with a single food tour in Madrid, and that has since grown into a celebrated brand now operating in 18 cities. Since merging with Walks in 2021, Lauren has helped steer both brands with purpose by prioritizing community connection, storytelling, and sustainability. When she's not shaping better travel, she's likely sharing recipes and culinary traditions on her blog, Spanish Sabores. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Great to have you here, Lauren. So just as a little icebreaker question, I want to ask you and the other two panelists as well, if you can just share one simple travel habit that you've adopted that helps you travel more responsibly.
So, okay, this one's, it's a challenging one for, I think, everybody, because we all have our own travel styles and also the kind of logistics of when and how long we can travel for. But I always try to urge myself to go slower and stay longer. Kind of together, ask the question, am I trying to cram too much in, or is there a way to do this a little bit slower, even in the moment, like just be conscious and catch myself before running over to the next thing. Like, am I just enjoying this cafe? Do I really have to go to the next place? And also just challenging yourself to see if you can stay a bit longer in a place to really kind of get under the skin of the destination and not just check off boxes.
That's such great advice. I think slow travel is, might not always be possible, but it's definitely a great goal to work towards for sure. So next up, we have Elena Meneses, one of our local guides in Lisbon. Excuse me. Elena was born in Lisbon and has deep roots in southern Portugal. She's worn many hats over the years: researcher, entrepreneur, writer, and now local guide. She spent 6 years as a fellow researcher in landscape sciences at the University of Évora before co-founding an organic supermarket in Almada, which she ran for 8 years. Along the way, she also explored her passion for storytelling and published 2 children's books in 2022 and 2025. Elena now works full-time as a local guide in Lisbon, where she brings the city's rich history and hidden stories to life for curious travelers. Welcome, Elena.
Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Elena, can you share one simple travel habit that you've adopted that helps you travel more responsibly?
Well, yes, I think the main thing starts before you go to the place, like the choice. It's like the key, I would say. So to do a lot of research. Not everyone does a lot of research, of course, but I receive the groups, and also looking at my family, there's always one willing to do the research. So you need at least one planner in the family, and I think it's not so difficult to find. The others are happy to join normally, but I'm the one who does all the planning in my family, and I do go for places that I think they're not quite discovered yet, that are not really being spoken of. And so sometimes even it's about your own perspective about the places. So I have this thing in my mind. I had a long time with my husband the idea of going to Venice, and then rather recently I changed. Like I have a daughter, I would like to show her and to take her with us, but realizing how much the challenges now that the locals are living in Venice and with all the tourists, maybe I wouldn't find that destiny, the thing I have in my mind. So For starters, really do some research and find out if the place is really over touristic, because for sure it won't match what you have in your imagination. Yeah.
Yeah, managing expectations, I think, can really go a long way. And as a fellow planner, I definitely agree that it's helpful to have at least one person doing, the research and making sure you know what you're getting into. So thank you for being here, Elena. Last but not least, we have Ketty Wilhelm, the founder of Tilted Map, an award-winning trusted travel blog and social media brand sharing realistic advice for how to make any kind of trip more sustainable. And sustainable travel, of course, does not have to mean an eco lodge in the rainforest, if that's what you're picturing. There's a lot more that can encompass. Ketty is a formal travel journalist who started Tilted Map in 2019 after finishing her master's in sustainable business at a university in Milan, Italy. She also leads e-bike trips in off the beaten path parts of Italy that most foreigners never visit. She's originally from the US and has lived and worked in Italy, France, China, Spain, and Nicaragua. She speaks fluent Spanish and Italian, thanks to her Italian partner of 10 years, and a bit of several other languages as well. And when she's not traveling, she's often advocating for climate solutions, exploring the outdoors, tasting new restaurants, and playing the Brazilian martial art of capoeira. Welcome, Ketty.
Hi, Lindsay. Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today, Ketty. I'm going to ask you the same icebreaker question. So just share one simple travel habit that you've adopted that helps you travel more responsibly.
Yeah, this is the hardest question because I have so many of them. I don't even know where to start. But I would say to kind of piggyback off of what Helena was saying, in the opposite direction, for those of us who aren't as big of planners and researchers beforehand, talk to people when you get there. I think that's an underrated travel skill is talking to local people. Ask people questions about their lives, ask them where they go, ask them about what's in the next town over. And that can be a great way to discover sort of hidden gem places, discover where the locals are going, and also just have a better idea of what's going on in the community. And I think a lot of people forget to do that when they're traveling. They're just kind of in their little bubble and they forget to engage with the people around them.
Yeah, that's such a great point. It is so easy to fall into that trap of just staying in your own mind, in your own bubble when you're traveling, but working up, the courage to just approach a local and ask, where they recommend or, what they would want to, I think that can really go a long way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thank you all for being here today. And just to kick things off for the Q&A portion of our event, my first question is for Lauren. So obviously, Lauren, you're based in Madrid, and I know Spain has been kind of the focal point of a lot of the media coverage of over-tourism lately. And of course, Italy and Portugal have as well. But Lauren, what do locals in places like Spain and Italy and Portugal really think about tourists? Is the media coverage accurate? Is it overblown? What's the real story, and how can we be more welcome guests when visiting?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me, it's a good question because we do see a lot of coverage in the press, a lot of kind of sensationalist headlines. And I see in some of the forums that I'm in different platforms, people saying, well, I'm not going to go there because they don't want me. I would say that sentiment couldn't be further from the truth. Like, tourism's been parts of these economies for many, many years. They're a huge part of the economy, and people are overall very welcoming and very happy to have tourism as part of their culture, really. Now, of course, the way that tourism has evolved in the last 10 years, 2 decades, depending on when you kind of start to look at some of the changes, there's definitely a downside to a lot of the ways it's evolved. There haven't been, I don't think, the structures in place to deal with the influx of tourism that we've seen. Governments have been slow, and people, as people will be, have been profit-driven at some of the opportunities that have presented themselves. So locals in a lot of these destinations that we're seeing in the news, they're frustrated. They're frustrated, they're angry, but they're not angry at you in particular. They're angry at their governments. They're annoyed at the tourists that do come and act in a way that you wouldn't want people to act in your home. But, going back to the question, of course, I would say, and it's hard to generalize for all locals, but most people are really welcoming, really excited to have people here, but want to have good tourists come to their destinations, want to have respectful people come to their destinations, people who are interested in knowing about their history, their culture, their present, their future. And I think that's possible. And we've seen shifts, but there's a long way to go.
Yeah, that's such a great point that you bring up, is that they're not necessarily, angry or upset at the tourists themselves, but there's a lot of, governmental and political and just structural issues behind the scenes that have really contributed to this and helped it reach a boiling point. So thank you for bringing that up. My next question is for you, Ketty. Can you expand a little bit on who tends to be seen as a quote unquote bad tourist by locals in places in, Italy and other places in Southern Europe? And how can people avoid falling into that stereotype, even if it's unintentional?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I think in a lot of ways, people can't necessarily tell where you're from. It's like, I know that there's a lot of attention on cruise ship tourism, right? Obviously, when 3, 4, 5, 6,000 people get off a boat at the same time in a small area and they're staying for 3 or 6 hours, it's going to be really obvious to shop owners and restaurant people who's coming from the cruise ship. Okay, this huge influx of people just arrived, and I know that there's definitely, a lot of locals don't like to see that, because those people, cruise ship tourists, generally don't leave much money in local economies. But also, I think a lot of times it's just anybody that comes in a big group, and a lot of times that is unintentional. It might not be that you're traveling with a group of 20 people, but it might be just the fact that you're in a place where it is going to be crowded because you're at the Sagrada Familia, or you're at, the main tourist attraction of a site. But I think in my experience also, it's not so much just being part of a big group. It's the way that people act. And I've had this experience a ton of times where I'm in a local shop and I'm chatting with a shop owner, and they turn because somebody else comes in the door and they're expecting to say hello to this person. And this tourist walks in, they don't acknowledge the shopkeeper. They don't say hello. They just look around, they're touching stuff, they're picking stuff up. And then they just, they have no interaction. They turn around and leave. Every single time, this has happened to me so many times, because I'm always, chatting with shopkeepers and stuff. Every single time, these people roll their eyes and they say, "Oh God," it's like that's what's annoying for locals, is having tourists who just show up, and it's like they act like they're in a theme park, right? They act like they're in their playground where they don't have to acknowledge local people. If you're visiting Italy, if you're going to go to Venice, learn the word buongiorno, right? When you walk into a shop, look at the shopkeeper, look them in the eye, and say buongiorno. I think that goes really far, and it goes farther. And it's something that people forget to do, to just have that human aspect of interacting with people when they travel.
It really does. A little bit of, Italian in this case, or the local language, goes so far. And I know, just speaking for myself anecdotally, I've come across travelers who say oh, I don't want to sound silly, or I don't speak any of the language. And what if I accidentally say a curse word or something? I think a lot of people overthink it, and
you gotta get over it. That's the only thing I can say for that.
Exactly.
Lots of languages. You've got to get over the fact that you're going to sound silly. People are going to appreciate it either way, and just don't worry about it.
Yes. At worst case scenario, you can laugh it off. And
exactly. Yeah.
So have a funny story to tell when you get home. Yeah. Elena, my next question is for you. Speaking as a Lisbon local, can you share how is Lisbon changing due to over-tourism, and what can travelers do to help preserve the city's unique cultural identity?
So we are not experiencing nothing like Barcelona. So we are really having a nice time still. I don't hear at all locals complaining about the tourists. Perhaps this thing that Katy was saying about the cruise ships, it's sometimes very obvious, because it's a huge amount of people that just flood through an historical center of a city, and that becomes sometimes problematic. I hear also sometimes that these cruise ships are promoting the souvenirs shops over there, and most of the meals included. And so then it becomes like this floods of people just taking photos, occupying a lot of space, and then not really giving back to the place where they're taking the photos. And that's to be really, really painful for the locals to witness. And I had some complaints in regard to that. But also I had in many tours a lot of people that come from the cruise ships, go for a tour, and they feel like they have to make the most of it. So they have a short time in the city, so they choose. And I think, of course, I'm promoting these tours, and I love this job, of course. But I really think it's a nice thought that they're having. Like, I have not a lot of time, so at least let me get on a tour. I'll get most of the city. I'll have a local explaining it to me, and so pointing already to the good direction. And so that's like a nice mindset, I would say. If you have to be in a cruise ship, if you feel like that's your trip, there's no harm in that. But just use those few hours that you might have to really go deep into that culture, talk with some locals, get in a tour, and get the most of it. So for sure. Another group that people complain a lot, and I think in Spain this is a major issue, you will confirm, it's I don't know in English if this is the best expression, the drunken tourism or the party tourism, but not so much the bachelor parties. I think this is a big thing in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, the bachelor parties specifically. In Portugal, I think it's more like the teenagers, youngsters, like creating a lot of chaos. But also these people, if they drink a lot, they do spend a lot as well. And so you have to look at both sides. But these people sometimes do create like a lot of garbage, a lot of disregard for a lot of noise as well. So, but also I feel like the locals, when they speak about the tourists, they are targeting when they have a negative opinion about the tourists. They're not targeting well. So they are just going for the obvious people over there, but they should really pay attention, not going really into politics right now. But of course, the perception, it's a little bit far away from reality. So the policies of the housing and all of this is very complex, but that's really at the root of the problem of the housing for the locals, not the tourists. So that's my view, of course.
Yes, definitely. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about how I think, Laura, and to your point, that a lot of locals aren't necessarily angry at the tourists themselves, but they're angry at the policies that kind of contributed to tourism becoming a commodity, so to speak. Lauren, my next question is for you. So once travelers are in the destination, how can they find authentic experiences, whether that's like hidden gem restaurants or local markets or cultural spots? How can they have these experiences without overwhelming the local communities?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think it's interesting because it's just changed so much in the past 15 years since we started Devour and Walks. When we started our tours, it was a really interesting way for someone to come and see a local side of the city. Now, not only are there many tours, so a tour, of course, as Elena said, is a good option, right? It's a good option if you go with a quality tour operator who's employing local people and has the tour designed by local people and ideally is a local tour operator. I mean, all of that is definitely an option. But when you talk about the hidden gems, the small restaurants or the local restaurants, I mean, there's an element of this that it kind of is no longer. Of course, there still are gems, but in this day and age, we have just so much information at our fingertips, and these types of places have also exploded in popular culture through food shows, Food Network shows, TikTok, of course, and social media. So there's not much left to find. I think, though, that the earlier tip also of like talking to locals, it's really interesting because you'll find a lot of times that people recommend places And if you do look them up online, they might have like 3 out of 5 stars. And so maybe you're a little put off or nervous, but most likely you're going to get a experience that at least is a little bit more memorable than, the number one place on TripAdvisor, which generally doesn't, in my experience at least, doesn't tend to be something that is in any sense of the word local or authentic. So it's hard. There's no easy answer. I think keeping your eyes open, also like trusting sometimes your intuition. This is something that I struggled with because I remember when I first moved to Spain 16 years ago, I didn't have a smartphone, barely used the computer. And so every place I would go into, every restaurant I was living in Seville in the south of Spain, was just kind of on like gut feel, on looking around, going in and trying something. And if we liked it, ordering more. And then there was like a 10-year period where I was like, almost had like a phobia of going into a place without having checked it and read reviews and read blog posts and like had it vouched for. And I think in the last, 5 years or so, I've kind of gotten out of that again and been like, go back to kind of sensing, looking, wandering down a street and trying something. And worst case scenario, it's not great. And I know when we travel, our time's so precious. So I guess, do a food tour if you want it guaranteed. I think I'm supposed to say that. But yeah, I do, again, going back to kind of the slowness and the intention. It's not always about the best dish. It's just, the experience is also part of travel. So I'd urge people to try that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people probably can relate to, we have so much information about our fingertips lately. And I definitely can understand the hesitation that, you previously experienced and that I've experienced. And I think many people could agree that, going into a place sight unseen and having no idea what it is or if it's going to be good or, never having seen any information about this place. But that often, not always, but many times results in some of the best food or the best experiences that you'll have.
Lindsay, can I add something to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I love what you were saying, Lauren, about, using your senses and looking around. I think, so I try to combine that with two things. I definitely get the whole, like, I don't go into any places without checking reviews anymore. But so there's two things that I look for. One is I filter for reviews that are in the local language. You can do that on TripAdvisor and you can do it on Google Maps. So if I'm in Italy, I am not going to places where reviews are written in English and they say that it's fantastic. And you don't have to speak the local language, right? I mean, it'll translate the review for you, or you just want to see that somebody writing in Italian said that this was 5 stars. Because trust me, a 5-star review from an Italian of any restaurant in the world means a lot. More than a review from an American. I can say that because I'm American. And I know that we like to say that everything is wonderful and good and fantastic, even if it's only okay. So that's one thing that I do. And then another thing I do to find places, with both of these tips, I still get there and I look at the place and I, use my senses and see if it actually looks like it's a good idea or not. But a lot of times I'll go on Michelin Guide and I'll look up Michelin star restaurants, and especially they have green star restaurants, which are sustainability focused restaurants that are both Michelin quality and like focus on sustainable sourcing of ingredients. I'll look up where those restaurants are and then I'll go to that neighborhood, either in person or I'll go to that neighborhood on Google Maps. Because a lot of times those are in neighborhoods that are not necessarily the fanciest places, especially if it's been a Michelin star restaurant, like just as of this year, right? It's probably not a super well-established chef. It's a new place. I go to that neighborhood and I walk around and I see what else is there. Or I just look on Google Maps and I see what else is close by, because that's often going to be a neighborhood with a lot of good food, even if not all of it is recognized. And then you can get something that's, awesome and surprising without having to pay Michelin star prices. So those are two of my things that I always tell people. And then yes, use your senses for sure.
It's excellent advice. Elena, I'm going to ask you a similar question while we're on the topic, but what advice would you have for how travelers can find authentic experiences in Lisbon specifically?
I would say if you really want to experience what locals are doing, and many people have that on their minds. Of course, you're not going to be, if you are American, if you arrive to Lisbon or to Spain, it's not supposed that you are local, of course. But in order to find those more local experiences, I find that there are this certain kind of feasts or festivities going on in the city. In Lisbon, you have Saint Anthony feasts the whole month of June. In Oporto, you have Saint John, and during those times, it's like local people. They are at their houses, nowhere to be seen, and then suddenly they go to the streets, and I think they even become more willing to talk because that's the big feast in their city, so they are really commemorating. And most of the YouTubers that I've found, or people like doing a comment about those experiencing those feasts when in a place, they felt like, whoa, this was the most wild thing, like the locals were having this behavior. So that would be a nice way if you are into a lot of a little bit of healthy chaos, I would say, because of course these festivities always bring a little bit of a chaos. But if you are willing to experience that, yes, just try to find what's the feast, what's the party, what's the festival. Here in Portugal, we have a lot of Moorish festivals, medieval festivals, and locals tend to go to all of these things. So it's like a nice thing to experience, always really connected with the history of the place, of course. So that would be one of the things I would do. And also, of course, I agree with Lauren and Kathy, what they've said about talking to the locals. That's extremely important. So when I was a researcher talking to farmers, I learned so much. Like I had 6 years talking to farmers. Now I've changed the public, but I keep doing this kind of being like a detective in my own city, trying to find when I go for a coffee, I ask the person, so for how long have you been working here? What's your favorite place to eat? Even sometimes to buy this really basic stuff, like if you need a shampoo. In Lisbon, there are these drugstores, historical drugstores. And if you go to one of these drugstores, it's definitely better than going to this big supermarket. So it's an historical shop. It will have like this person there working for a long time, and then you can buy your shampoo while finding out about the next place to have dinner. So it could happen like that, and it will be for sure a more organic way to live the city.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I, Lindsay, actually, it just made me think of something. Like,
go for it.
So two of the tours that Devour does that I think are just really interesting and really like a service for the people who do them. And sorry, I know this sounds like a sales pitch, but are the flamenco tours that we have in Spain, in Madrid and in Sevilla, flamenco and tapas, and then in Lisbon, food and fado, mixing these art forms, these dances, these folkloric kind of experiences with the food element, makes it kind of sellable, right? It makes an experience that people this sounds fun, this sounds interesting. But for us, when we're able to do those tours and give people the context and the information about what they're about to see before they go to those shows, means that the show comes alive in a different way, and you're definitely being a much more respectful viewer when you're watching those things. And those examples, but I think it goes back to the point that at the beginning of the conversation was made about doing your research. I know that not everybody's a researcher, and also not everyone has the time to read 5 books before they go on a trip. And there is also this kind of like alternative view that we want some things to just be kind of natural and spontaneous and not maybe know what we're watching, but then you find out later. But okay, so like there's a balance. But I just think that when you go somewhere, if you do the research, whether it's on the flamenco or the fado or the country or the politics, it just enriches your experience. It makes you a better observer, a better listener. It like brings you up a couple levels, and you're going into that place in that experience with more information so that your observations can actually give you even more information. And it's just those tours are kind of really concrete examples of where that happens. Because otherwise you're watching flamenco and you suddenly start to clap. And we see this with other people watching the shows. And that's so rude. Like, you're not supposed to do that, right? So it's just, I don't know, there's just a lot that you can do by educating yourself. I don't think that travel is not just something that you should do thought and intention behind it. I think that's also like the heart of what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think these flamenco and fado shows are things that, tourists think that they, have to do when they're in Spain or when they're in Portugal. And a lot of people might see it, even if it's unintentional, it's like just a thing to check off their list, but the cultural context behind it is so important. And yeah, just having been to flamenco shows myself here in the south of Spain, just seeing people start clapping or just not knowing the etiquette, we can't necessarily fault them if they don't know, but it just goes to show how, taking a tour like that, can really help provide that cultural context that a lot of people would otherwise be missing.
Yeah, and you don't need the tour. You could read the 5 books or the one book or the article before. But if, a tour, at least it's a way to get that without having maybe done all the homework in advance. But either way, it's yeah.
Yes, absolutely. To each their own. So we're almost out of time. These almost 40 minutes have flown by. So before we wrap up, I wanted to ask everyone just one last question. We didn't have a ton of time to get to food, but I want to just ask as like a really quick rapid fire final round. How can travelers identify truly local spots to eat or shop in Spain, Italy, or Portugal? Elena, I'll start with you.
Okay, I'll start with an example. So we have the codfish cake, and codfish is one of the main things in our culture. So it goes hand in hand with our history. We went a long way to Newfoundland to fish for cods, and we have been professionals in salting and drying the cod. We advertise, and it's really true that we have 1,000 ways to cook cod. And there is this very recent shop in Lisbon. I'm not sure if they have them in other places beyond Lisbon, where they got the traditional codfish cake, which is supposed to be mashed potatoes with cod, some parsley, and the egg to bind it all. They are little fried cakes. They took that traditional recipe and they put another traditional thing for us: sheep cheese, like from the mountain range, which is very has a very deep flavor, very strong. It pairs very well with wine. So they took the sheep milk based cheese and put it inside the codfish cake, and a very real authentic codfish cake will cost in any coffee shop like €1 something. This one costs like €6. It's a shop for tourists. And I tasted because I didn't want to be left without like experiencing what is out there new. And then it really doesn't go well, all of that thing, the cheap cheese, milk cheese inside the codfish cake, and then they serve a port wine. So this example goes to say, like, be suspicious when 3 epic foods from a country happen to be together in the same experience. It's not really what it's supposed to be. Yes, that's the example I remember.
That's a great thing to look out for, though, in Portugal. 3 in 1. Ketty, I'll go to you next. How can travelers identify truly local spots or things to eat when they're traveling abroad?
This is one of my favorite. Topics. So the first one I always tell people: look for restaurants that only have the local language on the menu. At the most, maybe they have the local language and English, not because I'm an English speaker, but because that's just the language that they assume. Like, even if they get a couple of tourists, even if it's not a restaurant catering to tourists, anybody from another country probably speaks enough English to read a menu. If you see a restaurant that has 5 languages on the menu, do not eat there. It's not going to be authentic local food. It's food that's catering to tourists. Look for local dishes. Also, kind of like what Elena was saying, look for hyper local dishes. So like in Italy, for example, if you're in Milan, don't look for a restaurant that serves carbonara and la matriciana, right? Look for a restaurant that serves risotto alla milanese, Milan-style risotto, something that is from that city. Because it's the same in France and Portugal and Spain and Italy. Dishes are hyper local. It's not just, the same. It's not just pasta dishes are from everywhere in Italy, right? They're from one region or one town even. So I think a tiny bit of research on that, even just Google like what pasta dishes are from Rome before you go to Rome, and then get the carbonara when you're in Rome, not when you're in Milan. Stuff like that can make a big difference. And then also I think just choosing restaurants geographically. I always tell people if they can see a cathedral from where they're sitting, it's not going to be a great restaurant. Go 5 blocks away from any major tourist attraction to look for a place to eat, because it's just going to be better quality. It's going to be not catering to tourists. So those are kind of my rapid fire 3 big things that I like to say.
Yes, definitely. Locals don't need to pay for the view, I think is a great point to keep in mind.
Exactly.
Lauren, last but not least, what would your tips be for finding truly local and authentic places to eat and shop in Spain or anywhere in the destination?
Quick. Local markets. Spain, Portugal, and Italy were fortunate to be filled with true local markets, some of which now, because of, I think, the recession and the economic kind of recovery since the recession of 2008-ish, have been filled with food stalls as well. Some traditionally had them as well, but in the markets, you're going to see the ingredients that people buy. You're going to see what they're filling their carts with. You can then seek out those ingredients in restaurants. You might not even know they exist. And if the markets do have eateries as well, they're often things that are interesting, or you can try something that you might not find in a more traditional restaurant. And often, not always, but often around the market, in that kind of the blocks going off of it, have some interesting and good eateries as well, where the market vendors, get snacks and eat as breakfast or stop for a quick lunch or bite after work. So yeah, I would say the local markets, seek them out, go try a few different ones, and they're well worth it.
Amazing. Love it. Great note to end on, making me very hungry, even though it's still very early for dinner time here in Spain. Before we log off, Lauren, can you remind everyone where to find you online if people want to see more of your content?
For me, well, you can find me if you want to learn how to cook Spanish recipes. I have a Spanish recipe blog called Spanish Sabores, or you can follow me more professionally on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Elena, is there any social media platforms or maybe the names of your books that you would want to let people check out?
Oh, I'm sorry. The books are in Portuguese still, so it will be probably very difficult. But let me write my Instagram here. Yeah, it's there. But I just use Instagram to share little stories of little details that I find, and I always try to run away from the crowds. So in that case, yes, I always think nice tips.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, a day in the life of a local in Lisbon.
Can I just add something also? Yeah. People in Portugal, they tend to focus a lot in the cluster around Lisbon and Sintra, and most of those monuments there, they have these long queues, and even if you get through the queue and you get like tickets paid in advance and you have like a shorter queue but still a queue, when you get out there inside, it will ruin your experience, the amount of people still. So there is in Portugal also like a cluster of really UNESCO monuments more to the center, to be like 1 hour and 40 minutes north to Lisbon. You have like two monasteries and a convent, which together make the most of it, like give you much more than just go to the monastery of Jerónimos, which is like one of the most visited sites in Lisbon. And sometimes to just make these little shifts will make like a huge difference in your experience.
Yeah, definitely. Distributing the amount of visitors, I think, can go a long way. And Kenny, last but not least, can you remind everyone where they can find you online?
Yes, of course. So tiltedmap.com is my blog, and then I'm Tilted Map everywhere, especially YouTube and Instagram. You'll find me there, and yeah, like to share lots of tips like this and guides and all kinds of things. And I also run e-bike trips in this beautiful place in Italy, if anybody wants to join this fall.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for being here today. So as promised, I do have, if I can bring it up, we do have a special gift to you for your time and for joining us in this very important conversation. Through the weekend, you can get 10% off of your tour with Walks or Devour with the code Mindful10. This will also be sent out in an email in about with the next hour or so. So if you don't have time to log on and book now, you'll get that email later on. But again, this is only valid until the end of the weekend. So be sure to get your tour booked if you have any travel plans on the horizon for this summer or the rest of the year. So thank you so much once again to Lauren, Elena, and Ketty for being here today and sharing tips that we can all learn from no matter when we travel or where we travel. And thanks as well to everyone who tuned in from home. Just wishing you safe and happy travels, no matter where you're headed next. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lindsay, before you go, can we take a selfie?
Yeah.
If you
Bye,
put
everyone.
it back on screen.